moving between dimensions.
Okay, folks, I'm starting the recording now. This is part 2 of DM60. And let me talk about responsive web design, and then we'll get into some details. So let me start with a general overview. I haven't given you an overview of responsive design yet, I'm pretty sure, right? Anybody who's not muted?
No.
Yes, you have not.
I'm sorry, say again?
Yes, you have not.
Oh, yes, I haven't.
Given us
Okay, okay, cool.
that.
All right, so responsive design is actually a term that was invented by this guy, Ethan Marcotte. Let me share my screen. And let's see, are you seeing my screen yet? Let's get a web browser. Oh, here we go. No. Responsive design is the current, I don't want to say it's a fad or trend because it's here to stay, but it is the current vein of thought of web design, which has had phases and fads in the past, but this one's a little more serious. Let's go to exercise 9. CSS3 media queries. Okay, so I'm going to make this a little bigger. CSS3 media queries are part of responsive design. So this article here, which I'm waiting for the link to load, is kind of the original article from the guy who invented the term and the concepts. And in this article, can you see, when you see my screen, do you see the bar with your faces underneath it?
No.
You can set it up a number of ways. Mine's in a little.
Mine's on the side.
Okay.
I moved mine to the side.
But I'm wondering what you see when I share my screen. You don't see it.
See your screen on the left and then your face on the right.
Okay, so you don't see everybody else.
No.
All right. Okay, so this article here, as you can see, was May 25th, 2010. And so responsive design is that old, and which is not really old, but you can see that one of the first things that's talked about is flexibility and responsiveness and media queries, meaning you query the device to find out what it is, and then you flow the content appropriately, which is what this is all saying. So this is a long article with lots of comments, but there are 3 essential parts of responsive design, and that is, one part is what we call a fluid or flexible grid, and next week we'll talk about grids and flexbox and how they're used for layout. So 1/3 of one of the 3 components of responsive design is a flexible or fluid grid or layout or flow of your content. And then they have what we call media queries and responsive images. So media queries are what we're going to look at tonight. And a media query is a way to style your page in any way you want, depending on the device. So you can have a completely different look for something on the phone, than on a tablet, than on a large desktop screen, and so forth. So the media query is part of CSS, and they're called CSS3 media queries. The third component, besides the media queries and the fluid grids or the fluid layout system, is responsive imagery. And responsive images are a whole topic unto themselves that we're not going to get into tonight, but we'll get more into that later. Okay, so waiting for the page to load. Come on, you can do it. All right. So that link was here. Let's look at this next link called Responsive Web Design Basics. And this example here is showing you that as the size of the window changes, the content reflows. You can see what's happening. The white part of that is supposed to be the web page, you see. So that's done with responsive design and using media queries. The viewport is the window itself, the part of the window that is not the chrome around the sides, like the scroll bars and buttons and address bars and things like that. And so the size of the window or the viewport is generally what you want to queue on. Because, you know, a phone or a tablet or a laptop or whatever, they're going to have different size viewports. So there are different things you can key on in terms of querying for different kinds of things. But the size of essentially the window size, that is really the key that we're generally concerned with. Let's see here. Media queries. Okay, here's an example of a very simple media query. Do you see what's highlighted on my screen? You see the highlighting, right? Where it says media print?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. And you see my cursor moving too, right?
Yes.
Oh, that makes me
Yeah.
feel much better. All right. Good.
Yeah.
So this, where it says at media print, and this is a comment, but essentially what this does is say all the styles that are here within this style sheet, where it says print style sheet goes here, those styles are only used when the thing's printed. They're not used for web display. So you can have a separate print style sheet, and it's very easy to do that because all you have to do is change whatever styles you want to change from the default or screen sheet, and then they'll be overridden. So you can change the fonts and black backgrounds and widths and so forth. But that's actually a very old, print media, that is really old. That goes back, that's not CSS level 3. CSS level 3 media queries let you do a whole lot more. And let me show you another example. This here. Okay, so here's a page. I did this website a while ago, a long time ago. But this is responsive. I have a width on the inside that changes as it gets smaller. I don't know if you see the columns that are double columns at the bottom, switch to one column right there. The images get appropriately smaller. The buttons do not get smaller. And so the main difference you see here is with 2 columns to 1 column right there. At some point that changes right there, all right? Here is a grid that's done with a series of floats and responsive design. So here we see 5 columns. Things will get smaller until the point where it switches to 4 columns. Gets smaller, switches to 3 columns. Gets smaller, switches to 2 columns. And I think if this browser window got any smaller, it would go to 1 column. But so on some phones, it would go down to 1 column. So that's an example of a table in a sense, because this is a huge grid of a lot of things, a lot of issues, but it's responsive so that the columns will change. So that's a basic use of responsive design. That's a very simple basic use of just to change the number of columns and, you know, and adjust the sizes to a certain point.
So would they, what kind of, how do I say it, like input would they put into the code to make it so like small sections have those like small little bars right underneath, like where it says like for one of the monthly planet things?
Yeah.
What kind of calls would they use for that?
Well, that's where we're going right now. Great question. I'm glad you asked that question. Let's talk about code. So I'm going to go back to another link from the exercise here. Actually, before we go to breakpoints, we'll go to media query, this one. So here's an example. Let me make this bigger. Okay, here's an example of how you set what's called a breakpoint, which is where things change, right? So what this is saying is, at a maximum screen width of 600 pixels, the background color will be blue. I mean, I'm just boiling this down to the essentials. That's essentially what these lines of code say. So it's basically saying here we're using screen as the only thing that we're keying off of. This is the only thing that's deciding on where our styles are going to change. Is the size of the screen, specifically the maximum width of 600. Okay, and this simple statement doesn't look simple, but it's actually simple when you kind of get to know it. But all it's saying is maximum width 600, light blue. So try it yourself. Let's see what that does. See if their little interactive site actually works. All right. Stays blue there. Up, turns to yellow there. There's the breakpoint right there. So going back to that line of code. That defines one breakpoint. So you generally define several breakpoints because you might decide that, you know, you think in general terms of phone, tablet, desktop. I mean, phones, tablets, and desktops are all different dimensions these days. There's no standard phone or tablet or desktop dimension, but you can ballpark it. And you can say, okay, up to this many pixels, it'll look like this. Up to this many pixels after that, it'll look like that, and so forth. And that's all we're really doing here. The styles you put in there are completely up to you. You could change colors, fonts, you can make content go away, you can change the way the menu lays out, you can change the number of columns, and whatever you want to do. So the important thing is the actual place where you make your breakpoint changes. So let's see what we got here. Okay. So here, this is a different way to do it. Up here, this is a statement inside of a style sheet. And you can have multiple statements like this with different widths to capture your different breakpoint sections and style them differently. So this is an internal or external style sheet. If you look down here, another way to do your, oops, too far, I lost it. Here it is. You can have separate links to different style sheets based on the width of the screen. So here you would have like a style sheet for, you know, big, medium, and small screens. So you'd have 3 different style sheets, and you would link to the different style sheets by putting separate link statements in the head section. The other model is you put all of them in one document, and you define your breakpoints in sections of that document. So whether your styles are defined in separate style sheets for each range, or whether all your styles are in one style sheet and you separate them out that, you know, within that style sheet, doesn't really matter. There's just 2 different ways to do it. So here are the syntax on how you make separate style sheets. And let's read this one. Minimum width 900, minimum width 600. So if this statement comes before this one in the head section of the document, this style sheet loads first. This style sheet loads second. And the order would be significant if you're doing this kind of coding, because what comes last overrules what comes before it. So if you're starting by saying minimum width 900, and then maximum width 600, the up to 600 is going to overrule the up to 900. Or 900 and over, I should say. So it's really a question of, well, let's look at a realistic, okay, here we go. Okay. So let's look at this example. We have a style sheet here, and it's got 1, 2, 3 rules, and the second and third rules are the ones we're concerned with. The first rule is just saying that the color of the background of the page is light blue. That's all that says. And that would, since that's the first rule in the style sheet, that would apply to everything. Now the second rule here, this is our CSS3 media query, which says minimum width 400, that background color changes to light green. So browser comes across that, it's going to make it light blue, and it goes, oh, wait, the width of this device is over 400 pixels, and it makes it light green. But it reads further down, and then it says, oh, if the minimum width is 800 pixels, it should be lavender. So it's a kind of an interesting way. You can order these like going large to small, small to large, saying max or min width. And so there are different ways to do this. Let me give you an example that we just looked at. So let's look at this one. This is a 5-column. It goes down to a certain breakpoint, a 4-column, a 3-column, a 2-column. Okay, and it would go to 1 if I could. So I just happen to have that code somewhere. All right. And here it is. Here it is. Can you see that style sheet? Anybody? Can you see it? You can see it. Okay. Not making it any bigger.
It's small. Very small.
Let's see if I can make this bigger. Oh, this is not supposed to be Text Wrangler. Oh, I didn't want to use Text Wrangler. If I try to make Text Wrangler bigger, it crashes. So I'll copy that. Go away, Text Wrangler. Hello, brackets. I thought I had brackets on here. I thought I had it open. Yes, there it is. Okay. Let's do a new document, paste that in. Okay, so this here is the style sheet for this Monthly Planet website. Now the important part in terms of media queries, okay. So we start with 5 columns, 4 columns, 3 columns. Can you guys see this?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a CSS comment. So when you have /* and then //, that is a CSS comment. So 5 calls is just a comment. The browser ignores that. But it's nice to comment your code when you start doing styles for different sections, because it's easy to see, oh, if it's 5 columns, these styles take effect. If it's 4 columns, these styles. If it's 3 columns, these styles. So those are just standard CSS comments. Now, the important thing is right there, that @media, screen, and max width 1,000 pixels. So what I've done is I've divided this up into what I'm seeing as 5 columns, 4 columns, 3 columns, 2 columns, and actually 1 column. And how am I doing that? How am I setting the breakpoints on, making these columns? Well, here, 5 columns, I'm not using a CSS3 media query at all. All I'm doing is using a float. So what does that mean? It means that 5 columns is just the default, is what that means. It means everything's 5 columns until we go further down the style sheet. So we're starting agreeing that 5 columns is this big page. But then it says, oh, well, you know what? If the maximum width is 1,000 pixels, then apply these styles instead, which will reflow into 4 columns. But then we're saying, oh, actually, if the maximum width is 800, forget the stuff above it, use these settings. Oh, if it's actually a maximum of 600, then use these settings. And oh, actually, if it's a maximum of 400, then make it 1 column. So you see, that's what we're doing here. So here we're going from large to small. You can go the other way around too. It doesn't really matter. But I'm starting with default being big in terms of the order I did the style sheet in. Questions so far? Is this making any sense at all to you guys?
A little bit.
Little
I have a
bit.
question.
Yes.
Yeah, getting it basically.
My question is there a relationship between the size of the monthly planet covers and the max width numbers you came up with? Because they seem like really round numbers.
The numbers in terms of 800, 600, 400, those numbers?
Yes.
1,000?
Yes.
They're just complete. I pulled them out of my butt. They're just showing you, you know, there's no specific devices that are specifically, I mean, if
So
we
it doesn't
look,
matter. It's just gonna bump it at some point. It'll bump the columns.
yeah, now, so the granularity is up to you. Like, for example, you could just do big and small, or you could do big, medium, and small, or really big, big, medium, and small. Like, in other words, you could do phone and desktop, or phone, tablet, and desktop, you know, and you're ballparking completely, right? So to me, I'm thinking in my mind, you know, what I'm calling, quote, one column would be no bigger than 400 pixels wide. So on a lot of phones, on some phone, on high-res iPhones, that we wouldn't get that far. We'd be in the 2 column. See, on the big iPhones. I don't know about the smaller iPhone sizes. So there's another relationship here which I didn't want to get into because it's a little weird to wrap your brain around. But it's the relationship of well, essentially the size of the pixels, and which determines the resolution or the density of the pixels. And it varies a lot on different devices. So these numbers are actually not always exactly used this way. The browser of the device will kind of do some trickery to kind of, how should I say this? So you get fairly consistent behavior, whether that's a really high res or low res screen, even though we're talking about numbers of pixels. I'm sorry, does that make sense, Leslie? Was it Leslie that asked the question? No?
Well, yes, it does. Although it sounds like there's an element of faith.
No, it's actually a line of code. There is actually an element of faith, but there's a line of code that you need to have. It's a meta tag. So everything here is done with the CSS, but there's one other thing. Since you mentioned it, I'll get to it right now. There's this meta tag, and it's not in that document. Oh, I need the actual, I need the HTML, which is here. Okay. Copy that. Let me see. You're seeing my screen still, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the HTML page for this web page. And there's a line of code, and you basically use that line of code and you throw it into your head section. That meta tag, by saying, let's see, how can I explain this? The scale of 1 for your, it's talking about trying to calibrate the different screens with different resolutions so that you don't get wildly different behavior based on the resolution of the screen. So the browser will kind of figure out an average desktop at like a little less than 1,000 pixels, and then kind of do some calculations from there. I think it's like 980 pixels or something that it uses as a standard for desktop width, and then everything's calculated off of that, and more or less. But that line of code has to happen. So you have to have that line of code in your HTML if you're using CSS3 media queries in this way, when you're keying off the screen, the width of the screen, which is what you generally do. So that there is important. But back to the CSS. Were there more questions? I wasn't sure. I even forgot your question, Leslie. Did I answer it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So there are, let's see. What I ask you to do in the exercise is much simpler than what we're looking at here. but I do want to show you one other thing in this. So if you look at this, besides the CSS media queries, which are the key, you'll see that they're all float left. See that? Float left, float left, float left. Except for the end, float none, because there's nothing next to it when it's down to one column. So that is a table that is a fluid table. No, I didn't want to go to my YouTube channel. I'll show you that later. That is, let's see here. If this guy is sitting here and then this guy is floating left and this guy is floating left and this guy is floating left and this guy is floating left, that allows this to flow like this so that the floats just bump under each other. See, that's part of the fluid grid. Now, there are different ways to do fluid grids, and that's a really low-tech way to do a fluid grid, a series of things floating to the left. And they'll just go, left to right, top to bottom, right? They just float left. So consecutive float lefts is a really easy way to do a fluid grid layout. There are different ways to do it, but that's a very low tech. That works in even old browsers, which is nice. So this is extremely simple in that level. Now, what I ask you to do for the exercise is not that intense. It is somewhere back here. Let's go to a new window. What I'm going to ask you to do is do a couple of breakpoints and change some background stuff and change some other styles. So back to the exercise. All right. Oh, right off the bat, polyfills. Anybody know what a JavaScript polyfill is?
No.
Does anybody know?
No.
No.
Well, that's really cool because then you won't try to use them and I don't have to get into this. All right, good. So let's talk about the more important stuff. You can read about JavaScript polyfills, just Google it and read the Wikipedia page. It tells you everything you need to know. Media queries for standard devices. So I mentioned that I ballparked to 200, 400, 600, 800 pixel breakpoints. You can actually really get into this if you want to, target specific devices. And there are lots of specific devices. But so this link I gave you, if you want to get into it, and quite frankly, when you see what's involved and all the different device things you could possibly select and pull out, you realize you'll just ballpark it like I did. Maybe you won't use 400, 800, and 1,000 or whatever for your breakpoints, but you have lots of options when you choose breakpoints. But you might find this page kind of overwhelming when you see all the different targets you can do. Okay, so what we're going to do is for exercise 9, we are going to create a background image and save it at 3 different sizes. And then we're going to change that background image based on the breakpoints and how wide the window is. That's essentially what we're going to do. So to do that, I'm going to start with an image and let me grab an image. I was looking at globes the other day. Sure, why not? Right, life science. I should be a really good citizen and not use a copyrighted image. There's got to be a Wikipedia image here. NASA images generally are. Okay, NASA image should be okay. All right, so I've got this image. And I thought I had the image on my desktop. Oh, I got the web location instead of the image, sorry. That can go away.
Isn't it just wrong to copyright an image of the Earth?
Well,
Come on, man.
image of Earth
You can do Google image.
domain. I just want
Google Earth, sorry.
to. Oh, I've got too many windows open. Where is the window I want? Oh, somebody's doggy is marking.
Sorry.
It's okay. Publicdomainpictures.net. That sounds like a safe location to get something from. Okay, so I'm gonna grab that. All right. So I got that. Oh, actually, I like this one better. That's the Earth I Know and Love from Wikipedia. Okay, great. I can steal that one. Yeah, I like that one better. All right. So I'm going to use this as my background image. All right, save it at 3 different sizes. Okay, make sure each is optimized for the web. So I'll pull this into Photoshop, and I'm just going to save it at 3 different sizes. All right, how big is this thing? Let me view actual pixels. It's that big. Okay, let's pull it in a little. What I'm going to do is make it a background image, but I'm not going to have it tile or repeat. I'm just going to have it in the page as a background. All right, we'll do that. What do you think? Yeah. All right. Transparent. Okay. I'm gonna see how big this is. Okay, so it's like 392 pixels. All right. That'll be my big size. Save for web. It's a ping. Yeah, ping is good. It's got transparency. Yeah, 64 colors, pretty small file size.
We can save it as a ping or
I'm going to see what JPEG. JPEG gets me down to a lot smaller. Medium quality, actually. I'll do medium quality there. Okay, so that's actually bigger than I would generally do it. But, all right, so I'm going to call this big. No, actually, I'm going to use the same thing for each. I'm going to call it Earth. Earth.jpg without a capital, because I'm going to use the same image at 3 different sizes. So I will call this big, Earth big. .jpg. Go back to the, oh, I don't need to go back. I'm going to this time change the size. Okay, I'll make this a little smaller. How about 250 pixels wide? I just need, all I'm asking you to do is take an image and save it at 3 different sizes. I mean, that's essentially all we're doing. And make sure they're optimized for the web. JPEG medium, why not? Okay, except this one is Earth medium. The other one was Earth big, right? All right.
Yep.
Step back, go to the size again, and this one's 150 pixels. We'll make it smaller. All right, and we'll save this as small. Yeah, JPEG medium, all right. Earth small. All right, so I've got my 3 Earths. That's all I need for that. And they're right here. So, Earth big, Earth small, Earth medium. All right, there we go. We're good to go. What do you know? All right, so these are going to be background images. What happened? Where's my exercise? Lost my exercise. All right. So I have done step 2. Okay, each is optimized for the web. So I'm going to set 3 breakpoints. And what I'm going to do is just have a different image for the background display at the different breakpoints. So that's just going to be a visual indicator that the breakpoints are working. All right. So if I want to set 3 breakpoints, how would I do that? Well, I could go to one of those examples. Let's go back to one of the earlier examples.
Yeah, after my class.
Oh, somebody can mute themselves there. Okay, oh, that's the print one. All right, so they actually don't give you the good examples in this one. Here they go. Okay. All right, so here is an example, by the way, of min and max together. Oops. All right. So you can actually get very specific with this. If you do it this way, where you set a min and a max, you have to make sure you don't overlap your settings. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to steal this right here. Okay. And I am going to put that. Oh, I keep trying to drag the tabs. Okay. Did I start this yet? Let's see. I thought I had a generic doc. It's not what I want. Okay, I can use this though. Let's see. Index. What's this? Welcome to brackets. Oh, no, I don't want brackets. I want my own. Oh, I have this. Okay. Okay, I have this. We'll use this for exercise 9. So I'm just going to say John's exercise 9. All right. So I have an internal style sheet here. Let's just move all that out of the way. And I can get rid of that and get rid of that. Okay, so somebody's eating.
Oh. Sorry about that.
So what I'd like you to do is have 3 breakpoints. I think that's what it says, right?
Okay.
Was that 3 breakpoints? What did I do with that? I lost my page again. Oh well. So this is defining a breakpoint with a minimum and a max. Now here's a thing that's going to really get you. These brackets. You see these little curly braces here? Mm-hmm. The mistake people generally make is they lose the last one. They somehow accidentally don't copy and paste it when they copy some code, or they forget to type it. And this is the end for this up here. Oh. And this whole thing is whatever rules are in there are the rules that are followed for this breakpoint, okay? Which is you got minimum 500, maximum 600, okay? So from 5 to 600 wide, those styles are used, but only those styles for between 500 and 600. So if you define styles like that, I'm going to copy that block of code, and I'm going to paste it, and I'm going to paste it again. Now it gets confusing because I didn't put spaces between those. So let's do that a little easier. This might be easier for you to see the 3 separate sections. Now, let's say I do this differently. This is 5 to 600 on each section. I could say max width 400. Or 300, not 400. Okay. Min width 1 pixel. I don't know. Everything up to 400 pixels. So I could play with this. And on the next one, I could say min width 401. There are lots of ways to do this, so this is not, you know, the best or worst or specific way. It's just, I'm playing with this. So I'm saying up to 400, 401 to 600, and then 601 min width. We don't even need a max width. Yeah, we'll say. Yeah, we don't even need it. Now you have to be careful because I don't want to eliminate that last bracket right there. So you see what I've done? Can people understand this? I could just have that max width, 400. Questions so far? Is everybody on mute? You know how to unmute yourselves, right? Okay, I'm going to
Do you
delete.
need to do separate sizes for the different phone devices? Because I mean, like some of the new phones have really big screens.
Nope. You can actually play with it. Experimenting is actually a good idea. I'm trying not to eliminate that. And let me just, that. Okay, so these are going to be our style sections here. And I'm going to furthermore keep more space between these. Okay. Well, when you put, there are so many different screen sizes with resolutions that you can kind of go crazy to try to, you know, overthink this. I would ballpark it with like a small, medium, large mentality. Small meaning most phones, medium meaning most tablets, large meaning desktops. You could go larger, small, medium, large, and larger. You could, you know, you could have a separate layout for a huge desktop, you know, but it's the kind of thing you want to play with. And actually, there's not a substitute for testing on phones and so forth. So it is good to have a phone to test on just to see, because you might want to change your breakpoints if you're trying to make it like a certain one column on a phone. But you can have ranges, you see, because the browser can adjust your content to fit in the screen. You just have to say how you want that to happen for the different screen sizes. Okay, so let's see here. All I'm going to do is right now is I've got 3 breakpoints, right? I've got 3 breakpoints. And what I'm going to do is now put a background image on each one. I think that's what the exercise said to do next. Try not to keep closing it. Why so slow? Okay. Okay, so I want a minimum of 3 breakpoints and instruct the browser to display the appropriate background image based on the size of the viewport. And the viewport are those numbers I put in. And then I want to do some other things too, but we'll start with that. So if we go to that old site I like to go to, HTML help. You need any code examples? And we look at different ways to do backgrounds. We're going to use a couple different things on backgrounds here. CSS properties, color and background properties is what we want. So we're going to look at things like repeat and position. So we're going to start with just the background image itself. All right. So you remember this little thing about the URL where you can't have a space between the URL and the open curly parentheses. You guys remember that? Hope so. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste that in this first one. Now, I am going to make that lowercase just because uppercase is the old way of doing it. All right. So background image URL. Oh, you know, I'm going to mute folks here because there's an echo going on. That's okay. You can unmute yourself if you need to talk. I'm going to make an images folder on my desktop to simulate the same structure I would have on the web server. I'm going to put my 3 images in it. And I think we're in a page called what? Test.html on the desktop. All right. Yes, I said save it. Save it. All right. So this is here, and there's the images right there. All right. Now, so this style sheet is internal, so the path to the image goes from the web page, correct? The web page is on the desktop. It has to go into the images folder and then find the image called Earth. Which size is this? This is the small. Earth small. Dot. Was that a JPEG? I think so. All right. Okay. So what it's saying is, if the maximum width is 400, in other words, this is the small size, then use this image of Earth small as the background. We're not done yet, but we're just going to start there. I'm going to take that same line and copy it and put it there and change this to Earth medium. And then I am going to here Earth. Did I call it large or big?
It's trying to auto-populate for you. I think you called it.
Big.
You called it big.
I called it big. Okay. Let's see if that works. All right. I'm just going to stop there and save that and check something out. Didn't find anything. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. All right, look at that. Okay, there's a breakpoint. You see that? I don't think I can get to the smallest breakpoint because the browser doesn't get any narrower. I'm going to adjust my breakpoints because oops, no, you go away. I'm going to say, okay, actually, if I looked at it in Safari, would Safari get me a smaller column? Let's see. Let's try something here. Okay, here it is in Safari. No, Safari doesn't get any smaller either. Okay, well, anyway, if I had a crappy phone, I could test it on the crappy phone. With the something that's high res might only go to 2 columns as well, unless I change my breakpoints. But it's working. So that's the part where you clap and cheer. Yay, it worked. Woohoo! So now, but we're not finished because we have to change the way this background works. You see that the background by default tiles to fill the screen. That's how backgrounds work by default. But the exercise says not to let it do that, as I remember. Specify that the background image is horizontally centered and does not tile. Okay, so if we go back to that HTML help site, I thought I had it here somewhere. Is it here? Come on. It's not there. Not there. Not there. You know, when you share your screen, you have all these different windows open. It does get kind of wonky. So let's find out why. Okay. I want to, let's see here. Let's go back to HTML help. you remember that section we were looking at that had the how to do the background image? Well, there was also the background alignment and so forth. So cascading style sheets guide, CSS properties, backgrounds. So we use the background image to put the image on the page. The background repeat is where we tell it not to repeat or not to tile. So we'll start that. Background repeat is the property, and repeat, repeat X, repeat Y, no repeat. So repeat is the default, repeats top to bottom, left to right, or left to right, top to bottom, which is X and then Y. Only repeat horizontally, only repeat vertically. Don't repeat at all. I'm going to say background repeat, no repeat. Right? That's what we want. So we go back to brackets, text editor. And in this, I'm going to say, we'll add semicolon and add background repeat dash no repeat, background repeat colon no background background repeat no repeat. I think it is, right? See, sometimes I can't even remember. I think it's no dash repeat. And that will just stop it from repeating, but it will still be in the upper left-hand corner. Let's save that and reload this. Background repeat, no repeat. Sure looks right to me. I hope that's the right file. I'm saving test, right? Yep, test.html, okay. Why is my background still repeating?
Is it all closed off with the curly braces?
Yeah, it looks right. Oh, yeah, it looks right. There we go. There's my body section.
You got to clear the cache on your browser?
Sure looks like it should be background repeat, no repeat. That's the value. So, oh, background dash repeat should be no repeat. Yeah. Oh. Background dash repeat, no repeat. Did I spell something wrong? Sometimes I forget the K in background or the G. Oh, I know what's going on. I'm in the 400. I'm in the small section. Okay, never mind. It is working. We're just not seeing it. So let me put it in the other sections. Silly me. Get that in there. Okay, background repeat, no repeat. Background repeat, no repeat. All right, now we'll see it because it's in all three sections. No, lost it completely. Oh, I have a typo then, since I lost it. Background image, small. That one doesn't have a typo. Okay. Semicolon, background repeat, no repeat. Semicolon end, that looks good. Oh, do you see that typo? Can you guys see that? That's a colon, it should be a semicolon. Ah, all right, save. When I didn't see the image at all, I knew that there had to be a typo somewhere. There we go. And now we see that the image doesn't repeat. But that's not quite what we want yet because the exercise says we also, oh, not that. Why do I keep losing this exercise? We want to center it. So that's another CSS rule. Horizontally centered does not repeat. All right. Oh, it's time for a break. Okay, we're almost finished with this. All right. So if we go back to the HTML help site, oh, I know what it is. I have two different browsers open here, and they're driving me wonky. Here we go. Then you see the background position. Background position says if you want to center it, top, bottom, left, right, blah, blah, blah. So I think it says to center it horizontally, and that would be center. Left, right, top, center, bottom. Okay, so I'm just going to say center. And so the background position property will be set to center. Okay. Then we'll take our break. So and save that. And it doesn't center. Background position. Ugh. And typos will kill you in this business. And save. Reload. All right. So, and I can't get to the smallest size, but I know the Earth would get smaller. All right. So we've got our 3 breakpoints, and we've done the different background size things, but now we want to vary at least 5 other styles. And there's a couple other things we're going to do. So this is a good time for a 10-minute break, and we'll finish up shortly after. How you guys doing? Questions?
I can't get my image to pop up is my problem right now. I'm trying to figure that one out.
Oh, nice game background. Well, let's take try to figure it out in 10 minutes. We'll take a 10-minute break, and then I'll troubleshoot it after the break. How's that?
I have a quick question.
Okay, quick question.
Can you go just after the break? Can you go back over essentially like relative sizes for the image that we're saving?
You mean when I made them in Photoshop or the code?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. When you made them in Photoshop.
Oh, okay, sure. All right, cool.
Great.
All right, let's take 10, and we'll finish in about 20 minutes, I think, after that.